What's up, guys? How we doing? Welcome back to another episode of the Jedi in Exile. Today we are picking up where we left off with the start of season 3 of Bad Batch.
Woohoo! They're back.
Yeah, they are back. So this bad boy kicked off with a 3-episode premiere.
Yep.
So we're gonna work our way through each episode. But obviously we are picking up pretty much where we left off at the back end of season 2.
Yeah.
With Omega captured on Mount Tantis.
Yep.
And the rest of the crew kind of mourning the loss of Tech and trying to find her.
Yeah, and I think for me, this has been I've been more excited about this season of Bad Batch than a lot of the Star Wars media, simply because we went to Star Wars Celebration, and one of the panels that we actually managed to get tickets for was the Bad Batch panel, and it wasn't my first choice of panel, don't get me wrong, but actually got a lot from it. And we were actually teased with some footage that wasn't then released afterwards.
It was released a few months later.
Oh, was it released a few months later? So, yeah, we did get some, at the time, unseen footage. And that really, really sort of whetted my appetite. And then finding out, obviously, that this was going to be the last series of the Bad Batch, seeing how everything was going to be tied up. So I have to say, my anticipation levels were sort of through the roof. So episode 1 was called Confined.
Yep.
Like you say, starts off very much with Omega in captivity. She's got a little doll. You get the impression it's pretty much a military base, I want to say, with everything being very repetitive. It's almost like Groundhog Day, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, the day starts off, Emery comes to the door. I'm going to do a really bad accent now, but good morning, Omega. How are you? We've got a lot of work to do today. And all of that, and it's very, very repetitive. And you can tell, obviously, that she spent quite a bit of time there because Omega's appearance is a little bit different. Her hair's a sort of different style, a bit longer.
Yep.
Well,
did we not, if I'm remembering correctly, did we not get essentially like a weird time jump that tried to show how repetitive it was, where at the very start her hair was season 2 Omega, and then after a couple of the repetitions,
yeah, well, we
it
get
changed
her.
to
She
the
makes
new
marks
haircut
as well,
yeah.
doesn't she, on the wall? But she's essentially in a prison cell. As much as Emery's telling her you can go where you want, it's not like sort of how the other clones are treated. And we see Crosshair, looking very depressed as well. But there's a lot of clones being marched around. Emery makes it very clear to Omega she's almost a guest there.
Yeah,
she's not a captive, but her room is pretty much a cell. So, yeah, we see, obviously, in this episode, we do get a glimpse of Crosshair. We see that Omega trying to talk to him and saying, we've got to try and find our way out of here. And Omega still has that kind of hope of escape and hope that the rest of the batch, i.e. Hunter and Wrecker, are looking for them and trying to get them out, whereas Crosshair is on the
complete opposite
other side of that. Yeah,
given
in the
up,
sense, completely.
Yeah. And I think part of that comes from what we saw him go through in season 2 in terms of everything he thought he knew about the world was wrong.
Well, he was so loyal to the Empire, wasn't he? And then obviously the Empire, in his eyes, pretty much turned on him. And we had that great episode. I want to say it was episode 8 or episode 9 of season 2.
The one in the snow. Yeah,
the one in the snow, which clearly was a turning point for him in the fact that he shoots an Imperial officer. And after that is held captive. So, yeah, clearly we know that Tantis is where these experiments are taking place on clones. We get the phrase M count is dropped in this episode, which clearly...
The midichlorians are back, guys.
Yeah, and so straight away you get this inclination, and we get it obviously more in episode 3, which we'll come on to, but we very much get the inkling that this is almost like going to answer some questions about the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Even though that's still quite some way
and some of the stuff potentially that was also going on at the very start of Mando season 1 with the whole reason that they were trying to do experiments on Grogu, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. So we feel like, again, Filoni-verse, it's the spider's web. It's
praise be to Dave Filoni.
Yeah. So yeah, the M count is mentioned. Obviously, we as an audience know pretty much what the M count is going to be, but it's not really. It's just teased at the moment, isn't it? Where they're taking blood samples off everybody. Now, interestingly, Nala Se clearly is ahead of the game. She's destroying Omega's blood samples because she realizes that Omega pretty much is the key to this. And so she's letting all the other scientists and Dr. Hemlock in particular believe that Amiga isn't the answer, because she's trying to protect her. Obviously, she feels very almost like a mother-daughter bond with Amiga, which is interesting. I mean, I've mentioned Hemlock. He is so evil. The character's voice, I feel like they've cast that character so well. I was just talking to you off camera. The voice actor of Dr. Hemlock is a character in House of Cards, and he's a really psychotic. He's like a tech guy, pretty much, where the CIA arrested him and they put him in and say, right, if you can help us basically catch another guy, they frame this other guy, but they say if you can almost be undercover, pretend you're a hacker and that you're trying to help this guy, and the voice is it's just perfect because it's so softly spoken, and the evil characters do speak softly, don't they?
How many times do you hear the Emperor
calm.
shout?
Yeah, they're very calm, calculated. Well, you don't see Darth Vader run anywhere, do you? He's always walking, no matter what's going on. The Death Star could be being destroyed.
No sense of urgency.
He's just walking.
The thing that I love about Dr. Hemlock, obviously, long-term viewers and listeners will know that we're big fans of the Legends universe, pre-Disney.
R.I.P.
And I'm pretty sure it was Operation Hemlock was all about kind of cloning, and all the sort of stuff that Dr. Hemlock is involved in. So it's nice.
It's the little tidbits.
Yeah,
that
it's
taken,
nice
isn't it?
to
We've
see
said
that there's
before,
still these nods to the Legends universe, which is just kind of one of those, again, little pre-Disney fans. We see you.
Yeah.
We got you. You know.
Yeah, it is a nice little nod, and I think it's clearly, and we'll see this probably evolve over the season because we're hopefully going to get answers, seeing as this is the last season of the Bad Batch. But it's so interesting to see what's going to happen going forward. Clearly, we think this links into Mando and sequel trilogy. Well, let's hope that is the case, and we're getting more answers. And again, I was saying this off camera. It's almost like Disney have said to Dave Filoni, try and get fans on side who didn't like the sequel trilogy. And so hopefully in maybe 5, 10, 15 years, as all this media comes out, that fans will have an appreciation, more of an appreciation for the sequel trilogy.
But I think one of the big criticisms of the sequel trilogy was just that there wasn't a lot of context. And I know that was divisive because
it wasn't a cohesive story, was
people
there?
say when you go back and watch the original trilogy, there's a lot of stuff that you take for granted as a more modern fan because it's been fleshed out since.
Yeah. Well, the Emperor Palpatine is a clear example of that. We see him as a hologram in Episode 5. The "What is thy bidding, my master?" You see that scene, and then you don't see him until Return of the Jedi, and everyone's like, "Well, who is the Emperor?"
And so, looking at what the situation is now with all these other things that are fleshed out, and we know all the backstories, you're right. Like that could very much be what this is all building to.
Yeah, absolutely. So Episode 1, I feel, was a good little teaser into the season. It was a good starting point. We then move on to Episode 2, which is called Paths Unknown, which focuses more then on the actual batch, which unfortunately now we're just down to Hunter and Wrecker.
Yeah.
Wrecker has one of the best lines in this episode, though, I have to say. Again, I'm sorry, poor accent time. Defective and effective. The whole... they obviously revel in the fact that they are defective. But this was a nice episode because we obviously see some young cadets, and we really see Hunter is clearly obsessed with finding Amiga, and you see the side of them that they're also thinking about what's going to happen afterwards, about how are they going to be able to live, survive. The clone cadets are clearly feeling that as well. They've been bred and trained to be soldiers, and suddenly that's all been taken away from them with the destruction of Camino, and obviously the Empire going with the Stormtrooper model, with sign up, essentially. So this was a nice episode. We also get the return of Daniel Logan, who played Boba it was a voice actor for Boba in Clone Wars, and obviously in live action. Couldn't believe he's 36 now.
Well, I said to you that I love what kind of new era Star Wars is doing in terms of giving people the opportunity to feel the love from the fans a bit more. And we talked about this again slightly briefly before we started recording in terms of what happened with Hayden Christensen, in terms of all the backlash that he got from the prequels, and the fact that those fans have now grown up and he's
become adults kind of and are a big voice,
getting the love. The same with Ahmed Best,
of course,
with his role in Mando.
Yeah. Yeah, Keller
And
Fett.
so it's nice because Daniel Logan was another one who I think a lot of
Tornwees here.
yeah, a lot of the hate kind of comes from
It's bonkers that you could hate. Like, I don't know how old he was. What if he's 36 now? Then he probably would have been about 13, 14 at
Yeah.
the time of filming
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones. And why hate him? He's got such a small role.
and I think that
I think it was hard for people to believe that that boy would grow into Boba Fett, who's
yeah.
so badass in the originals.
But I think the premise is it's nice to see this renewed kind of people bringing people back so that they can actually get the love and appreciation that they deserve.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously we see there's 3 clone cadets, isn't there? One that is really keen on helping the batch, and 2 that aren't, but then come round. And it's almost like the moral of the story is that team together, everybody achieves more. That the clones are actually soldiers that are part of a unit. That, you know, the batch wouldn't have been able to survive without the 2 who took off with the ship and then came back. But they also probably wouldn't have been able to survive on the outside without the batch then helping them. So I think it's again, nothing really major happens in the episode, but we just kind of get these more emotions and feelings about, you know, the clones' place in the world. And you forget about the clone cadets. There's going to be, you know, it's not just adult clones that have been thrown on the wayside.
No.
It's kids. And
Well,
clearly,
it's the aftermath of the war, isn't it? And they were gearing up to not
Yeah.
know how long the war was going to last. So there's all these other generations that were coming through.
yeah, and clearly, obviously, the big point of why the batch go to this planet is because that's where they think Hemlock's base of operations is. Because we see the return of Roland Durand, who I just knew him as like the horn guy, because he had
from season 2.
Yeah, so he had his horn cut off, didn't he? In season 2, he was back in power with his mother, the head of a crime family, and he's the one who gives them the info. So again, it's nice to see other characters come back as well. So this episode, yeah, again, with only 20-minute episodes, you're not going to find too much happens in the episode, is there? But it just expands on the story, especially if we're going to get 16 episodes in this series like we have done the first 2. On the flip side of that, episode 3, I feel like we get a lot from the 20-minute.
I love that. We don't really get
Yeah.
very much in these 20-minute episodes
On the
until
one
we get to
hand,
episode 3.
Yeah. Well, episode 3 kind of blew my mind. I mean, this episode, I mean, Palps is back. And this is great because Palps was in a little bit of season 2, wasn't he, where the rotunda of the Senate rises from the middle, and he obviously plays this long game of getting rid of the clones in season 2, plays it really smartly. The fact that it's Ian McDiarmid, I just think is obviously phenomenal.
I love
Like,
it.
we've not got from Clone Wars, was it Tim Curry? Tim Rice played because the voice actor who played Palps in Clone Wars, the first like 5 seasons, I want to say, passed away, didn't he? And I'm sure they got
It was.
and the voice sounded
Strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a stronger word I could use.
No, it's
but
strange.
it was strange, wasn't it? So
I think it's difficult.
to hear old school Palps was.
I've got a lot of time. I've got a lot of time for the fact that when you move to a different medium, sometimes you can't carry that over, and it gives people a chance to make the character their own. Like you wouldn't say that Clone Wars Anakin not being voiced by Hayden Christensen
we didn't lose
made
anything.
him. No,
Yeah.
but yes,
But you do appreciate the actors who, like Anthony Daniels is one. He is 3PO, and he says he's my character. I will play him in everything.
I feel like it's that thing of, particularly with Palpatine, a lot of the stuff that we saw original trilogy, it's voice, isn't it? Because let's be honest, he doesn't do a lot in terms of moving around, fighting people, doing any. It's voice.
He's got a hell of a swivel on a chair, though, hasn't he? On a throne.
Yeah, I'd sign him up to James Bond, you know. But I think that's the point. It's an iconic voice, and therefore,
yeah, I think it's great that he's back. Obviously, this episode starts with this assassin that we've seen before in season 2 that Rex captures, who electrifies himself essentially with like
he bites down on the capsule
thing, in his mouth. But we see him back, so that kind of sets up this whole thing about there being maybe a group of assassins.
Either that, or have they pulled a Clone Wars and just gone? We're just gonna put things in out of chronological order, and you guys can just piece it together.
Yeah, maybe they have done that, but that was interesting to see.
I think more likely that it is a group
Yeah,
of
yeah,
a group of.
you'd think so. So obviously the Emperor's come in, Hemlock's gearing up for this, and they've not had really any results so far. So there's mention that they've done an experiment behind all these lasers, high protection. The transfusion worked, but the specimen's M count was lowered.
Yep.
So does that mean they've got Jedi captive and they're cloning them, but say they're putting that person's the Jedi's blood into
Like a clone
a
trooper or
specimen,
whatever. Yeah,
whoever they are putting it into, that then obviously the metachlorians are going down so that they're not becoming a Jedi. This clearly, again, it is the biggest hint possible that this is framing the whole sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
of Palpatine.
with the clone of Palpatine. Yeah, 100%.
So the fact that, and we get the Project Necromancer is mentioned again. Again, it's just something so small,
Well,
but you get
feel
excited,
like it's
don't you?
so you hear Project Necromancer, right? And obviously we know that Necromancer is to do with like dead and beyond dead and like spirits coming back and all of that sort of stuff. So it 100% hints that it's the whole plan B, but it's not, because we know that the Emperor had like a million plans for what would happen. But
I think it's actually the interesting thing for me. Obviously, this seems to have all started from Clone Wars, doesn't it? With the whole the Zillo beast
yes,
being cloned, and Palpatine then gives the Doctor the orders to clone this beast, and he's obviously like trying to keep it hush hush. And so Palpatine's ideas, even before the Jedi had been purged, seems to be like, how do I keep my legacy going? How do I almost live forever? In clones, etc. So yeah, this is obviously an underlying thing from Clone Wars through the originals, through then
there's the Filoni spiderweb again.
Exactly, through to the sequels, and in theory the end of Palps of the sequels, but who knows? Maybe he'll just come back again.
Return again.
Exactly. But yeah, I think this episode also showed, with obviously Amiga and Crosshair escaping this episode, but Amiga has such an individual relationship with each of the Bad Batch, and her relationship with Crosshair, obviously it's going to develop because they escaped, but it's interesting for me that she just doesn't give up on him. She sees him as part of the team, and when he's telling her, go away, she just won't take no for an answer, and eventually they make this sort of haphazard escape against these Commandos who look
honestly
stunning, like chef's kiss.
Honestly, the design for the clone Commandos is so good. We were chatting just before we filmed, and I said it makes me miss playing Republic Commando, and I want another game or another TV show or something whereby I can vicariously live and pretend that I'm one of the clone Commandos.
Yeah, and I think that the whole Crosshair is clearly mentally damaged, but they still find a way of getting off the planet, which just goes to show how advanced these defective clones actually are, and the fact that Amiga, who must be, you want to say 8 or 9, can actually fight. Like, obviously she's had some training from the batch, she's had some training from tech on ships, etc. But she's got this individual relationship with each member of the Bad Batch that I find obviously will develop more with Crosshair as we go on. But for me, that was quite interesting.
Well, I feel like that's what this show has kind of become, is that it came as the spin-off from the Clone Wars, right, where they were introduced in towards the back end of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, and it's called the Bad Batch, obviously.
Yeah.
So you'd think it would just focus on Clone Force 99.
Yeah, and she obviously becomes part of that force, but I'll be honest, the episodes are very much about her and her
She's
interactions.
the key now, isn't she?
Yeah, 100%.
And clearly the end of when they actually do take the blood sample and they manage to put it through the machine that checks all the blood, etc., that she seems like she's a match, that she will take the M count higher.
The key to unlocking everything.
And so Hemlock obviously calls off these fighters when they're escaping and is like, I've got all the resources from the Emperor. We are going to find her. This is going to work. And then he shows the Emperor these specimens in storage, which again must be Jedi, we're thinking.
Well, so obviously we see in Kenobi, don't we? When he goes to
I
was going to say Castle Inquisitorius.
Yeah.
He sees some Jedi in storage, and we see it
Old
in
man with a stick.
we see it in Rebels as well, don't we? Because we see
Yeah.
Luminara.
Yeah.
So clearly, off the back of the Purge, some Jedi have been stored somewhere, and it would make sense based on M count that they are testing on these kind of specimens. But I feel like the thing that I love is we can all speculate, and there are some really kind of obvious things that could happen, but we also none of us know. That could be so far from what is actually happening. Going back to that piece at the end when they discover that she is the key, the thing that I really loved about that is the kind of question mark that brings around Emery.
Yeah.
Because obviously throughout the rest of the first few episodes, she was very much towing the party line. She wants to impress Dr. Hemlock. She is very much on board with everything that the Empire is doing. There's that kind of moment of hesitation, and there's the look just before they cut to credits where it maybe throws in the suggestion that she's actually announced what she's announced, not necessarily because she wants Dr. Hemlock's experiments to work, but actually because she had realized that was the way to save Omega.
I think we're still waiting to see how she fits into the story, don't we? Because we know that she's a clone herself, or she said that she's a clone. Whether she must have advanced aging, clearly, because she's a full adult. But yeah, that she's going along with it, and she's obviously not a straight clone like the rest of the clone army. She's
modified
a bit,
in some way.
She's
just like Omega first version.
Yeah, she's more like Clone Force 99. So, but this begs the question again with Omega with the M count. Is she force sensitive? And now we've seen from Ahsoka that pretty much anyone can be force sensitive. I mean, yeah, where does that leave Omega? I mean, there's so many unanswered questions, and hopefully we do get them all answered.
I don't know if we'll necessarily get absolutely everything, but I think definitely from the way that it's obvious that they're trying to connect things. We maybe at least will get a bit of a breadcrumb that will lead us into something that will happen on the back of, I don't know, new season of Mando or whatever, where these things are all answered. So, I mean, ultimately for me, normally when we do this and we get to wrap up time, we talk about scores, we talk about kind of everything as a whole, and I think we've talked about each individual episode as a 3-part.
We've always said before, haven't we, that it's hard to rank these sorts of episodes when they're 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
Because you get some episodes that are, and we've said this before, world building episodes, which something like episode 2 for me probably isn't even episode 1. It's episode 3 is then the meaty one.
Well, episode 1, you got to look at the fact that we're getting 16 episodes, we think 16 episodes in the season, that you have to use something to set the scene. And although it picks up from season 2, you need something that tells us and kind of sets the foundation for what's going to happen for the rest of the season, right? Yeah. What is the overarching storyline going to be? And this is definitely laying the foundation for that. As a 3-episode premiere, I thought it was great. Yeah. We have a bit of a soft spot for kind of the animation stuff within the Star Wars universe. So again, we're always going to love it. It's never going to be bad.
Yeah.
But for me, just a good start to the season.
Yeah. 100%.
Excited to see where we go with things. Yeah. I think there are enough question marks that we are going to keep guessing. And I think that's my one takeaway from this 3-episode arc is, as much as there are things that are pretty heavily hinted at, we don't know specifics.
No, nothing's really been answered. We've added more questions to it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that is what has got me excited for the rest of the season.
Yeah. No, 100%. I completely agree with you. But let us know what you guys think in the comments, and we'll be back next time where we'll be reviewing episode 4.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens in the future. So from the both of us, take it easy, and we'll see you next time.
May the Force be with you.